Imagine a man like any other. He works, has a family, grandchildren, takes part in community life. And yet, beneath that seemingly harmless routine, lies a darkness beyond imagination. That man was Andrey Chikatilo. No one would have suspected a thing. But what he was hiding ended up shaking an entire nation. October 1982. Rostov-on-Don in southwestern Russia. An industrial city with busy streets, workers coming and going, and an air of normalcy blanketing everything like a heavy quilt. But that peace was shattered when, in a forest near a train station, the body of a 13-year-old girl was found. The scene was chilling. It was something more disturbing. There were clear signs of assault, and one detail froze investigators in their tracks. The victim's eyes had been removed. Some forensic experts with grim faces recalled an old Russian legend that said eyes can retain the last image seen before death. Our bodies began to appear. Teenagers, younger children, even some adults. All in similar conditions, the same area, the same injuries, the same haunting atmosphere. Soon more bodies began to appear. Teenagers, younger children, even some adults. All in similar conditions, the same area, the same injuries, the same haunting atmosphere. Rumors spread quickly. Some said it was part of a dark ritual. Others whispered about organ trafficking. There were even suggestions that individuals with mental disabilities were involved. That's why behind closed doors, the investigation became known as the case of the innocents. But none of the theories held up. By 1984, the number of victims had surpassed 20. Authorities, caught between fear and shame, decided to keep the existence of a serial killer under wraps. After all, admitting such a thing in the Soviet Union was like admitting the system had failed. And that was unthinkable. Most of the victims were children and teens. Vulnerable kids, easy to manipulate. They were all found near train stations in wooded areas. The pattern was clear, but there were still no solid suspects. Police increased surveillance. Undercover officers were sent to train stations, bus terminals, rural paths. And during one of these patrols, something finally caught an officer's attention. A man emerged from the woods. His face was stained and he had a wound on his hand. He didn't seem panicked, but something about his behavior felt off. The officer asked for his ID. His name, Andrey Chikatilo. There was no legal reason to arrest him, but the officer, just to be safe, filed a written report about the encounter. The next day, the body of a young woman was found in that same forest. That coincidence changed the course of the investigation. Authorities began tailing him, watching from a distance, waiting for a mistake. And that mistake came. He was trying to strike up a conversation with a young man at a train station when he was stopped. He was carrying a briefcase. Inside, ropes, knives, petroleum jelly. Items that told their own story. But even then, there was no direct evidence, no witnesses, no traces that definitively linked him to the crimes. That's when they turned to an unusual strategy for the time: psychological profiling. Psychiatrist Alexander Bukhanovsky was called in to speak with him. Not as a cop, not as a prosecutor, but as a doctor. He spent an entire day with Chikatilo. No accusations, just listening. And Chikatilo spoke. He described things that chilled everyone to the core, how he gained his victims' trust, many of them minors, with candy, with promises, with games. How he lured them to isolated places, how he waited for the right moment. He explained his method, cold, calculated, remorseless. He described himself as a tool of something greater, someone who couldn't help it. He even said he mimicked KGB tactics as if that gave him some kind of twisted prestige. But how did he become that person? Andrey Chikatilo was born in 1936 in Ukraine during the Soviet era. His childhood was marked by pain, misery, and fear. His mother told him terrifying stories, claiming his older brother had been eaten during the Great Famine. No one could confirm it, but growing up with that idea speaks volumes about the desperation in his environment. As a teen, Chikatilo became withdrawn, socially awkward. He struggled with personal frustrations, especially in intimate situations. Still, he tried to live a normal life, got married, had children, worked as a teacher. But deep down, something wasn't right. He was fired from a school for inappropriate behavior. The incident was covered up. He moved, got another job, and in 1978, in secret, he bought a small house. That's where the first crime took place. A young girl, alone, lured with simple lies. Chikatilo took her to that house. What happened there marked the beginning of something that would only escalate. After that first act, there was a 2-year silence. Then he struck again, and each time the violence grew worse. He chose victims for their vulnerability, young people with no supervision in isolated places. Sometimes even adults, if they fit the profile. Some bodies showed bite marks. He said it wasn't out of hunger, but because of the texture. Even though he was questioned and briefly detained in 1984, they let him go. He didn't fit the image of a killer. He seemed calm, polite, almost invisible. Forensic science back then didn't help much. No DNA, no cameras. Everything relied on instinct and luck. And for years, luck was on his side. It wasn't until 1990, thanks to Bukhanovsky's profile and more targeted surveillance, that he was finally arrested for good. His confession included more than 50 tragic outcomes. During the trial, Chikatilo tried to fake insanity. He stripped in court, shouted nonsense, claimed to hear voices. But psychiatrists were clear. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't out of control, he was calculated. He was found guilty of 52 premeditated crimes. The trial became a national event. Media from all over the country covered it. It was the first of its kind in post-Soviet Russia. People followed every testimony, every photo in shock and disbelief. Finally, on February 15, 1994, his sentence was carried out. Today, Chikatilo's case is remembered not just for the scale of his crimes, but for what it revealed about a society that for years chose to look the other way. It showed how systems can fail, how appearances can deceive, how institutional silence can allow someone to act without consequence for over a decade. Chikatilo became a symbol of hidden evil, and his story, a warning that still echoes today, was justice served. Or was it just the closing of a visible chapter, while many wounds remain open? How much can we really trust what we see? How many ordinary faces are hiding secrets we'd rather not uncover? We want to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments.